Genghis Khan, an emperor who carved out one of the largest land empires in human history, was as feared as he was revered. His military strategies were brutal, efficient, and utterly remorseless. Here, we delve into the tales of his savagery, starting with the harrowing event at Nishapur. Number 1. The destruction of Nishapur. In the year 1221, the Mongolian forces under Genghis Khan's leadership turned their eyes towards Nishapur, a flourishing city located in contemporary northeastern Iran. Nishapur had the misfortune of falling into the hands of the merciless Khan after its governor, Inalchuk, betrayed and killed Genghis's son-in-law. This act ignited the Khan's wrath, setting a bloody stage for the impending doom. Upon the arrival of the Mongolian forces, resistance from the Nishapur inhabitants was met with a brutality that would become the defining feature of Genghis Khan's conquests. In response, he commanded that not a single inhabitant be spared from his fury. The streets of the once thriving city ran red with blood as his army laid waste to everyone they came across. Men, women, and children fell victim to the vengeance of the Mongols, their lives extinguished as swiftly as they were encountered. It was reported that in one single day, the Mongols slaughtered approximately 1.7 million people. In stark contrast to the bustling city it once was, Nishapur had turned into a silent graveyard. However, the vengeance of Genghis Khan did not stop there. To ensure the complete obliteration of the city, Genghis Khan ordered that even cats and dogs be killed. This command brought about the extermination of all forms of life in the city. The merciless slaughter continued for several days, until nothing remained of the once populous city but the echo of its past vibrancy. The once crowded streets were now littered with lifeless bodies, and the air was thick with the stench of death. Genghis Khan then ordered the construction of a pyramid using the heads of the slain as a testament to his victory. It served as a morbid monument, an ode to his savagery, and a chilling reminder of the fate that awaited those who dared to cross the mighty Khan. The city of Nishapur, which was once a beacon of civilization and culture, was reduced to nothing more than a macabre spectacle of Genghis Khan's ruthless wrath. Number 2. Decimation of the Khwarezm Empire. The Khwarezm Empire, a flourishing state stretching across large swaths of Central Asia, fell into the crosshairs of Genghis Khan in the early 13th century. This encounter would prove to be one of the most chilling episodes of his conquests, leaving a once prosperous civilization in ruins. This merciless campaign was triggered when the Khwarezm Shah, Muhammad II, made a fatal mistake. Genghis Khan, in an effort to establish a diplomatic and trade relationship, sent a 500-man caravan of Mongols to the Shah. Muhammad II, suspicious of this gesture, accused the Mongols of espionage and ordered the slaughter of the entire group. In response to this affront, Genghis Khan, furious at the mistreatment of his envoys, declared war on the Khwarezm Empire. With an organized force of around 200,000 Mongol warriors, the great Khan advanced toward the empire, eager to inflict his brand of ruthless vengeance. The warfare was swift and savage. Cities that resisted were met with an iron fist. The first to fall was the city of Otrar, where Inalchuk, the governor who had been responsible for the massacre of the Mongol trade caravan, resided. Upon the city's capture, Genghis Khan had Inalchuk executed by pouring molten silver into his eyes and ears, a testament to his wrath and a grisly display of poetic justice. From Otrar, the Mongol forces moved like a relentless storm through the heart of the Khwarezm Empire. One city after another fell, each subjected to extreme violence. Major cities like Bukhara, Samarkand, and Khiva were seized and razed to the ground. It was reported that the rivers flowing through Khwarezm ran red with blood, and the once lively bazaars were left in smoky ruins, littered with the bodies of the dead. Civilians were not spared. Innocent lives were extinguished without mercy, their homes razed and possessions looted. In Bukhara, it was said that Genghis Khan ordered the killing of every living thing, including animals. The entire city was reduced to a pile of rubble, with only a handful of buildings like the large Kalyan minaret left standing as a reminder of its past grandeur. The brutality did not stop at the physical annihilation of the cities and their inhabitants. Genghis Khan sought to erase the cultural identity of Khwarezm. Libraries were set ablaze, priceless manuscripts lost to the ravages of fire. The scholars, the carriers of knowledge, were among the first to be slaughtered, leaving an intellectual void in the region. Number 3. The sacking of Urgench. After wreaking havoc across the Khwarezm Empire, Genghis Khan turned his attention to its capital, Urgench, a city renowned for its wealth, culture, and the grandeur of its buildings. The punishment that befell this majestic city was nothing short of devastating, marking one of the bloodiest chapters in the history of Genghis Khan's conquests. The siege of Urgench was unlike any the world had ever seen. Genghis Khan led a vast army, attacking the city from multiple directions and employing strategic siege warfare. The resilient inhabitants of Urgench put up a strong defense, their will to fight fueled by their desperate situation. However, the ferocious Mongol forces were relentless, showing no mercy to the defenders. After several months of intense fighting, the city's defenses finally fell. What followed was a brutal episode of wholesale slaughter and indiscriminate violence. Genghis Khan's order was clear. No life in Urgench was to be spared. His warriors descended upon the city, executing men, women, and children without any distinction. It is said that the Mongols engaged in a chilling contest, with each soldier required to present the severed heads of their victims. Piles of skulls were erected throughout the city as a grim testament to the Khan's victory. Such was the scale of the carnage that the city's once teeming canals were said to be blocked with the bodies of the dead. Apart from the massacre of its inhabitants, the city itself was systematically dismantled. Beautiful palaces, grand mosques, and libraries that once echoed with wisdom were razed to the ground. Priceless works of art, sacred texts, and architectural marvels were all lost to the ruthless Mongol onslaught. The systematic destruction of the city was so severe that Urgench never regained its former glory, its cultural and economic influence fading away with the passing of time. Genghis Khan's armies also destroyed the intricate irrigation system surrounding the city. The once fertile lands were rendered barren, the life-giving canals blocked, and fields salted to prevent any future cultivation. This not only resulted in a severe famine, but also in the long-term decline of the region's agricultural prosperity. Number 4. Brutality against the Jin dynasty. Genghis Khan's conquests were not limited to Central Asia. His ambitions also led him towards the east, particularly against the Jin dynasty in China. This conflict would be remembered not just for the scale of its military engagements, but also for the extreme levels of brutality that were characteristic of the Mongol leader. The Jin dynasty, a powerful regime dominating northern China, initially underestimated the Mongols, considering them as mere barbarians. However, they were soon to witness the wrath of Genghis Khan, a force unlike any they had ever encountered. The assault began in 1211, when the Mongols launched a series of relentless invasions on the Jin Empire. The inhabitants of each city they captured were subjected to brutal and inhumane treatment. Entire populations were systematically massacred or forced into slavery. Buildings were razed, farmlands ruined, and city walls toppled, leaving in their wake an enduring imprint of devastation and despair. One of the most brutal episodes during this conquest was the siege of Zhongdu, the capital of the Jin dynasty, in 1215. For a year, the city's inhabitants endured relentless attacks and gradually depleting resources. When the city finally fell, Genghis Khan's wrath was absolute. Zhongdu was pillaged and burned, its residents slaughtered or forced into slavery. The once prosperous city was left in ruins, an ominous testament to the wrath of the Mongol Khan. The scale of destruction Genghis Khan unleashed on the Jin dynasty was unparalleled, even by his standards. After more than 2 decades of warfare, the Jin dynasty was decimated. Its palaces, libraries, and temples were reduced to ashes, its sophisticated culture almost wiped out, and a significant proportion of its population exterminated. The annihilation was not limited to physical destruction and loss of life. Genghis Khan's forces also plundered vast amounts of wealth from the Jin dynasty, significantly enriching the Mongol Empire. Moreover, many skilled artisans and craftsmen were taken captive and sent to Mongolia, leading to a significant cultural and intellectual loss for the Jin dynasty. Genghis Khan's campaign against the Jin dynasty exemplifies the brutal measures he employed to achieve his ambitions. The destructive aftermath of the war resulted in the downfall of a major Chinese dynasty and left a permanent scar in the history of China. The Jin dynasty's fall at the hands of Genghis Khan marked a pivotal moment in the Mongol conquests. It illustrated Genghis Khan's relentless pursuit of power and his willingness to resort to extreme violence and destruction. This brutal campaign reinforced his image as a fearsome conqueror whose ruthlessness knew no bounds. Number 5. Use of human shields in battle. Genghis Khan, in his quest for dominance, employed an array of ruthless tactics. However, few strategies showcased his ruthlessness more starkly than the use of human shields in battle. This brutal strategy not only demonstrated his military cunning, but also highlighted the depths of his brutality towards his enemies. Human shields were used extensively during Genghis Khan's invasions, serving multiple purposes. They provided a literal shield for his troops, protecting them from the enemy's arrows and swords. At the same time, they served a psychological purpose, as enemy soldiers often found themselves reluctant to attack for fear of killing their own people. The victims chosen to serve as human shields were often the surviving prisoners of previous conquests. These unfortunate individuals were forced to march at the forefront of the Mongol army, becoming the first targets of their enemies' defensive measures. Regardless of age or gender, they were pushed forward, their lives deemed expendable in the Mongol strategy. A prominent instance of this tactic was observed during the invasion of Nishapur. Following the city's capture, Genghis Khan used the city's surviving residents as a human shield in the ensuing battles. This horrifying strategy resulted in the mass slaughter of innocents, their lives snuffed out not by the Mongol invaders, but tragically by their own people in a desperate attempt at self-defense. In addition to serving as a protective barrier, the use of human shields also provided a psychological advantage. The sight of familiar faces in the front lines often sowed confusion and hesitation among enemy ranks, disrupting their morale and cohesion. This, combined with the Mongols' already fearsome reputation, made their forces even more formidable. Moreover, this ruthless strategy served as a chilling warning to those cities and empires yet to face the Mongol onslaught. It signified the fate that awaited those who dared to resist Genghis Khan's forces. By employing such an inhumane tactic, Genghis Khan showcased his ruthlessness and his complete disregard for the sanctity of human life. The use of human shields is a dark testament to the lengths Genghis Khan was willing to go in his quest for conquest. It not only signifies his strategic ingenuity, but also underscores the cold-blooded nature of his military campaigns. The horrors endured by these human shields remain an indelible part of the narrative surrounding Genghis Khan, further solidifying his reputation as one of history's most fearsome and ruthless conquerors. Number 6. The genocide of the Kharid tribe. Genghis Khan's brutal military campaigns were not only directed towards vast empires and wealthy cities, even relatively smaller entities like the Kharid tribe were not exempted from his relentless onslaught. The Kharid tribe was one of the many Mongol tribes that lived on the steppes of Mongolia, and their annihilation at the hands of Genghis Khan marked one of the earliest instances of his ruthless tactics. The Kharid and the Mongols were once allies, united under a common cause against the Tatar tribe. However, the power dynamic changed dramatically when Togrul, the leader of the Kharid tribe, turned against Genghis Khan due to the rising influence and popularity of the Mongol leader. This perceived betrayal ignited Genghis Khan's wrath, leading to a bloody and brutal conflict. In 1203, Genghis Khan led his forces against the Kharid tribe. The Mongol warriors, known for their horseback archery skills and quick mobility, quickly overwhelmed the Kharid forces. What ensued was not just a battle, but a near-complete extermination of the Kharid tribe. Men were slaughtered indiscriminately. Those who were not killed in battle were executed later. Women and children were not spared either. They were taken as slaves, their lives reduced to mere commodities. Genghis Khan's strategy was to utterly obliterate the Kharid tribe, to wipe them from the annals of history. But the brutality was not limited to physical violence. The cultural identity of the Kharid tribe was systematically erased. Their traditions, customs, and folklore were discarded or absorbed into Mongol culture. a cultural genocide that marked the end of their unique identity. The annihilation of the Kharid tribe also served a political purpose. It sent a chilling message to other Mongolian tribes about the fate that awaited them if they dared to cross Genghis Khan. This violent subjugation of a fellow nomadic tribe significantly bolstered Genghis Khan's standing, paving the way for his eventual unification of the Mongolian tribes. The extermination of the Kharid tribe is a horrific chapter in the life of Genghis Khan. It exemplifies his merciless approach towards those who opposed him, irrespective of past alliances. The event stands as a chilling reminder of the extreme lengths he went to consolidate his power and expand his empire. It provides further evidence of Genghis Khan's unflinching ruthlessness and his disregard for human life in his relentless pursuit of domination. Number 7. Biological warfare, the siege of Kaffa. One of the most chilling aspects of Genghis Khan's military strategies was his early use of biological warfare, particularly during the siege of Kaffa, a prosperous Genoese trade port in the Crimea. Although this event occurred under the rule of Genghis Khan's successors, the Mongols' use of this horrific strategy speaks volumes about the ruthless tactics pioneered during Genghis Khan's era. In 1346, the Mongol army laid siege to Kaffa. The city was well fortified and successfully resisted the initial Mongol attacks. However, as the siege wore on, the Mongols found themselves struggling with an unforeseen adversary, the bubonic plague. The deadly disease started to spread rapidly within the Mongol ranks, killing off a significant number of warriors. However, the Mongols turned this setback into a horrifying weapon. Infected bodies were loaded onto catapults and flung over the city walls, introducing the plague into the heart of Kaffa. This ghastly form of biological warfare turned the tide of the siege. The plague spread quickly within the city walls, causing mass panic and death. The residents of Kaffa, desperate and terrified, had no option but to flee the city, unknowingly carrying the plague with them to other parts of Europe. This resulted in the spread of the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death, across the continent, causing one of the most devastating pandemics in human history. Although the siege of Kaffa was orchestrated by Genghis Khan's successors, the Mongols' ruthless strategy of using biological warfare is a stark reflection of the brutal tactics associated with Genghis Khan's era of conquests. This horrifying approach highlighted the lengths that the Mongol Empire was willing to go to secure a military victory, even if it meant the mass spread of a deadly disease. The Siege of Kaffa stands as a grim example of early biological warfare, an event that eventually had far-reaching consequences for the entire continent of Europe. It's a testament to the Mongols' ruthless and innovative military strategies, and it also underscores the horrific human cost of their relentless conquests. This chapter adds to the narrative of Genghis Khan and his descendants as fearsome and ruthless warriors whose conquests left a deep and lasting impact on the world. Number 8. The Scourge of Herat. The city of Herat, once a jewel of the Khwarezm Empire, bore witness to one of the most horrifying episodes of Genghis Khan's conquests. The Scourge of Herat is a chilling testament to the Khan's ruthless tactics and the lengths he would go to suppress any resistance to his rule. In 1221, Genghis Khan's armies descended upon Herat, a city famed for its vibrant culture and rich history. However, instead of surrendering, the city's governor, Shams al-Din Kart, decided to resist. This act of defiance marked the city for one of the most brutal sieges in the history of the Mongol conquests. For 6 months, the city held out against the Mongol forces, their defiance steeled by the hope of reprieve. However, when the city's defenses finally crumbled, Genghis Khan's retribution was swift and merciless. What ensued was a massacre on a scale that was shocking even by Mongol standards. Men, women, and children were slaughtered indiscriminately, their bodies filling the streets of the once thriving city. It is said that every Mongol soldier was ordered to execute a certain number of civilians, with some estimates suggesting that the death toll ran into hundreds of thousands. The violence was so severe that contemporary accounts described rivers running red with blood. But the horror did not end there. Once the massacre was complete, the city itself was put to the torch. Majestic palaces, bustling markets, grand mosques, all were reduced to ashes. The once thriving city of Herat was left a ghost town, its grandeur buried under a layer of smoke and rubble. The scourge of Herat is a chilling testament to the ruthlessness of Genghis Khan. The brutality of the massacre, combined with the systematic destruction of a city of such cultural and historical importance, highlights the extreme lengths the Mongol ruler was willing to go to instill fear in his enemies and maintain control over his vast empire. Number 9. Execution methods, the breaking wheel and molten silver. Genghis Khan's reign was marked not only by his ruthless military campaigns but also by his brutal methods of execution. He used these as tools of intimidation and retribution, ensuring that his rule would not be easily challenged. Among the most horrifying of these were the breaking wheel and the use of molten silver. The breaking wheel, also known as the Catherine wheel, was a method of public execution that involved the victim being tied to a large wooden wheel. Their limbs were then methodically shattered with a hammer or an iron bar. The wheel was then hoisted onto a pole, where the victim was left to die slowly and painfully, often from shock or dehydration. This grotesque spectacle served as a potent reminder of the severe consequences of defying Genghis Khan's rule. An equally horrifying method of execution employed by Genghis Khan was pouring molten silver into the eyes and ears of his victims. This was a method reserved for those who had particularly infuriated him. The most notable instance of this was the execution of Inalchuk, the governor of Otrar, who had been responsible for the murder of Genghis Khan's merchants. His brutal execution was a grim demonstration of Genghis Khan's swift and merciless retribution. These brutal execution methods served dual purposes. On the one hand, they functioned as a deterrent, instilling fear in the hearts of those who dared to oppose Genghis Khan. On the other hand, they served as a method of retribution, a way for Genghis Khan to exact revenge on those who had wronged him or his empire. The breaking wheel and the use of molten silver are chilling examples of the extreme violence employed by Genghis Khan. Their usage underscores his utter ruthlessness and his willingness to resort to brutal and horrific methods to maintain his power and control. They also serve as a reminder of the widespread fear and terror that marked his reign, a testament to the dark side of one of history's most fearsome conquerors. Number 10. Forced migration and slavery. The bloody trails of Genghis Khan's conquests were often followed by massive forced migrations and the enslavement of surviving populations. These practices served the dual purpose of depopulating conquered regions to minimize resistance and supplying labor and military resources to the Mongol Empire. The Mongols employed forced migration on a vast scale. Populations from conquered territories were uprooted and relocated en masse. Men, women, and children were driven from their homes and forced to march to far-off lands. These displaced people were often resettled in areas where their skills could be of use to the empire or in locations where their presence would help to consolidate Mongol control. Many of these displaced individuals were also subjected to slavery. They were forced into various roles ranging from domestic servants to soldiers. Skilled artisans and craftspeople were especially valued for their abilities and were put to work enhancing the wealth and grandeur of the Mongol Empire. Moreover, children, particularly boys, were often taken from their families and trained as soldiers, further fueling the Mongol war machine. The brutal practice of enslavement was not limited to the civilian population. Captured enemy soldiers were often enslaved and used as forced labor or as cannon fodder in subsequent military campaigns. This not only provided the Mongols with a plentiful supply of labor and military resources, but also served as a demoralizing symbol of Mongol dominance over their conquered foes. These practices had far-reaching consequences. Entire cultures and societies were uprooted and scattered, leading to significant cultural and demographic shifts. The scale and brutality of these forced migrations and the widespread use of slavery further amplified the fear and horror associated with the Mongol conquests. The forced migration and enslavement carried out by Genghis Khan and his successors represent a brutal and often overlooked aspect of their rule. They underscore the ruthlessness of the Mongol conquests and the widespread suffering inflicted on the conquered populations. These actions not only served the Mongols' strategic and economic interests, but also served as a chilling demonstration of their power and control, a grim testament to their relentless pursuit of dominance.